in St. Paul, Minnesota, where it's been a gorgeous summer-like day. So we're going to be talking about money management and retirement planning. This is increasingly my favorite topic as I get older. We're going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to talk about how to better manage your money, how to increase your savings, how to identify the difference between acceptable and unacceptable debt, how to save money for retirement. We'll look at the 4 most common IRAs and talk about their differences. Then we'll talk about when you should be claiming Social Security benefits. And lastly, we'll end with a discussion about setting and meeting financial goals. I'm an attorney who has been working for many, many years on the business side of family childcare, trying to help you be more successful as a business. If you have questions after listening to me on this topic or any other business topic, I'm happy to try to answer your questions. Here's my phone number. Here is my email address. I don't charge anything for trying to answer your question. Your question might be answered on my website, tomcopelandblog.com, where I posted hundreds of articles on all aspects of the business side of family childcare, including a section just on money management retirement with a lot of articles there. I'm on Facebook. Every time I post an article on my website, it will appear on my Facebook page, and you can ask me questions on Facebook. I've written a book, Family Childcare, Money Management, and Retirement Guide. Available, you can go through my website to find it, or it's available through Red Leaf Press. I'm not preparing your taxes. I'm not your financial planner. I'm not providing you with individual professional advice. All right, so as we're going along, you can post questions under chat. Post your questions under chat. And several times throughout, I'll pause. And at that time, if people want to unmute their mic and speak, that would be fine. And I think we'll have a little time at the end. If you also want to speak, that's fine too. Melvia, you're writing on the board and everybody can see that. So if you could erase that, that would be great. Thanks. Okay, so when I was working on my book, I did a survey of over 500 providers and asked them questions about their money, retirement, savings, their attitudes, and so on. Well, as you can imagine, most family childcare providers are not wealthy. And I'm assuming you're not wealthy. Very few people had saved money for a 3-month emergency fund. Many had thousands of dollars of credit card debt. Very few were saving enough for their retirement. I think less than half had even contributed anything to their retirement in the previous year. Now, that's not to say that some providers aren't doing well financially. Some are. I've talked to providers who made a profit of over $100,000. So it's not that everybody is hurting financially. Just, I think it's true that most providers don't have a lot of extra money laying around to put aside for retirement. So when I started working on the book, I thought, well, knowing this, knowing that most providers aren't making a whole lot of money, I thought maybe my first chapter should be about how to increase your income. But pretty soon I realized, no, that was a mistake. Why? When we were graduating from high school, we made a little bit of money. We graduated from college, if you did, probably making more money after that. And over the course of your lifetime, if you look back, you're probably making more money now than you did many years ago. But like most people, you're probably spending more money now than you did 10, 20 plus years ago. So I thought, well, if I just started talking about how to make more money, for most people, that would just mean they would also start spending more money. And so that, yeah, that didn't make a lot of sense. Increasing income right away is not helpful unless we are also looking at expenses. Therefore, I decided that it was more important to focus initially on expenses. Managing your money, I think, starts with getting a control on your spending. And getting a control on your spending starts with understanding where your money is going. So, a first exercise that I would suggest is to track where all the money in your family goes over the course of a month and put them into one or two columns: fixed expenses or flexible expenses. Fixed expenses are those things that you don't have much control over. Every month you got to pay the mortgage, property tax, maybe, every 6 months, gas, insurance, car loan interest, perhaps, credit card payments, perhaps, utilities. There could be some others. Flexible expenses, you do have more control over: food, clothing, gas, vacation, entertainment, cable TV. Don't tell me cable TV is a fixed expense. Charitable contributions, hobbies, and so on. Everybody's flexible expense list is probably a little bit different. If I was creating this list for myself, I would have a whole category: used books, because that's how I like to spend my money. One provider said she had a category: shoes, not clothing, but shoes. She spent a lot of money on shoes. So, okay, it's whatever it is for you. All right. So once you've listed out these expenses, then what usually happens? When the month begins, people start spending money. Fixed expenses, flexible expenses. And at the end of the month, if there's money left over, we call it savings. But for many people, there's not money left over for savings, or if it is, it's not enough. So we're going to do several things with this exercise. The first thing is to identify a modest savings goal amount. How much could you save without really too much trouble every month? $25? $50? Something that you're pretty confident, I can do this every month. Let's say it's $50. So you make that $50 savings a fixed expense, and you put it at the top of the list. So on the first of every month, you put aside, let's say, $50. Now, if as the month goes along, you start running out of money before the end of the month, you got to cut something from your flexible expense side. And it's up to you what you're going to choose. If it's me, I'm not cutting my books. No way. I'll cut clothing or food or something else that's less important to me than my books. It's up to you. Providers who do this don't miss the, $50 or whatever it is that they're putting aside for savings. They just don't miss it. A point here is making savings a high priority. In general, the reason why most people are not saving enough money is because they're putting that on such a low priority. We'd rather spend money on just about anything else except saving money. So that's the first thing we want to do here. The second thing is to take a little bit closer look at your fixed expenses. And the things that are in that category that I think you could probably get a little more control over than the other ones would be car loan interest, credit card payments, car loan interest. We want to try to avoid paying any more interest than we have to. And so I would urge you to think seriously about trying to reduce debt, in particular, debt associated with car loans. Credit card interest. We'll talk about credit cards a little bit later, but for purposes of this example here, credit card interest makes it hard to save money for retirement or for any other reason. And so that's another place I would focus on trying to reduce credit card debt. All right. Next, when you look at your spending, is it sustainable? In other words, well, maybe in 1 month you're spending more than you're taking in. Well, okay. Your income goes up and down. Sometimes expenses are higher or lower. Okay. But over time, of course, we got to keep our spending below our income. We want to get into the habit of savings. Putting that savings amount away at the beginning of the month is an effort to establish a habit so that it's just every month. Of course, I got to save something. We got to live on less. I'm assuming that, again, we're not rich, but I think almost everyone could spend a little bit less and save a little bit more. Now, what else? You would look at your spending, and I would urge you to think about it in this way. Is how you're spending your money reflect your current values? In other words, is this a reflection of what's important to you? If not, what would you change about your spending to put it more in line with what's important to you? Now, let me give you an example of this. When I was working on my book a few years ago, I was on the road doing training on the road, and I was reading a book, and the book was called Your Money or Your Life. Your Money or Your Life. It's an excellent book that has you take a look at how you're spending your time, what you're spending your money on, and what's important to you. Because we want to use our time in such a way that it reflects what's important to you. So, when I was reading the book, at that time, my wife and I lived in a 3-story, 100-year-old Victorian home that we had bought very cheaply, but we were fixing up all the time. It's 100 years old. And at the time, it was just my wife and I and 2 cats. And it was 6 bedrooms. Now, we bought it very cheaply. We loved the house. We enjoyed fixing it up. It was great. But as I was reading the book, I was thinking to myself, well, now in my life, what is important to me? Is it important to spend the next $1,000 fixing up our house? Because we're always spending a bunch of money fixing it up. Or would I rather use that money for something else? And it occurred to me just in a flash, we should sell our house. Because I didn't think spending that next $1,000 on our house was as important as other things that I thought were more important, such as retiring earlier, taking a longer vacation. So I came home, and with some trepidation, I said to my wife, you know what? I think we should sell our house because I don't think this is where we want to continue to put our money in. And she said, I think we should sell our house because it's too big, because we have rooms we haven't been in 3 years and we don't know what's in there. So we downsized. We downsized to a 1950s Rambler, 1-story, 2-car garage. We'd never had a garage. Central air conditioning, never had that. Lower property taxes, lower utility bills. This, 3 bedrooms. That's all we needed. So your values, I think, can change, certainly would change over time about where you want to spend your money. But what I'm saying is, I think people should regularly look at where your money is going and ask yourself, is this what's most important? Or am I putting off other things I'd rather do because I don't have enough money for it? And if you are putting off things you'd rather do, take a look at your spending, and maybe you want to make some adjustments to meet other goals. All right. Now, when people have said that there are two kinds of people in the world, spenders and savers. And savers tend to marry spenders, and spenders tend to marry savers. And the leading cause of divorce is money. When I got married many, many years ago, I was the saver, my wife was the spender. And shortly after we got married, I realized, my wife told me, she had never balanced her checkbook in her life. And I thought, how can that be? I don't understand that. She said, well, every month the bank would send back the checks to us in the mail. That was in the old days. And she said, I would take the checks, I would go to my check register, I'd check them off, draw a line and keep going. I would not try to balance my account. And I said, why not? And she said, I don't want to know. I don't want to know if I'm off. Well, where did that come from? She had a fear about money. Her parents went through the Depression. And her parents' attitude about money was, there's never going to be enough. And that's what she was taught. And that's how she felt. It's just, Tom, there's just never going to be enough money. So I don't want to pay close attention to how much money I have because it'll just make me anxious. My parents went through the Great Depression. My parents had a different attitude. My parents' attitude about money was, we can manage. We can get through whatever problems there are. It's okay. Money's a positive thing. So we have to work this out. Now, my wife still doesn't want to deal with money. And so, okay, fine, I'll deal with the money. So she doesn't want to pay attention to it. And I need to reassure her, yeah, we got enough money. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Now, our culture encourages spending, encourages anxiety about money, right? Because we see ads all the time, thousands and thousands of ads. If you pay attention to ads on TV, and particularly the car ads, right? You'll see these ads for all these cars. And these cars cost what, $30,000, $40,000? And you can borrow money for the car. They're encouraging you, obviously, to borrow money. And when you look at those ads, they're appealing to your emotions. And money and spending is emotional. So why do you want to get a car? Not to get from A to B, but for freedom, for excitement, for sex, for something, you could drive to the ocean, drive to the mountains, drive through the snow. Like, is that how we drive our car? No, I don't think so. I can remember my assistant when I worked for a childcare agency many years ago. She was like 20, 21. She came to me one day and said, Tom, I'm going to buy a new Jeep. I said, great. What for? Oh, to get to work. Great. Why a Jeep? Oh, it's so cool to drive. Oh, how are you going to pay for it? My father's going to loan me the down payment. She couldn't afford a down payment. She couldn't afford a Jeep. They're cheaper vehicles. She didn't need a Jeep because it wasn't necessary to get a Jeep to get to work. All right. So, but it's the excitement. It's the emotion around the Jeep. It's the emotion around spending. Our culture does not encourage saving. When is the last time you saw an ad on television that said, thinking about spending some money today? Don't do it. This message brought to you by, who's going to pay for an ad that tells you not to spend money? Nobody. Now, in family childcare, I think there's some specific issues around our culture of spending. Sometimes providers will spend money on their children to express their love. Oh, these kids will love this, this child would love that, little treat, a little toy, a little something, and you're giving it to kids and you're spending money on kids as a way of expressing love, spending money to meet an emotional need. That's a mistake. There are many, many ways you can express love for the children in your care. Obviously, you give them a hug all the time. You tell them you love them. You tell them how great they are. You listen to them. You do lots of things. You don't need to spend money on kids. Parents don't expect you to spend a lot of money on their kids because their children might come back to them and say, Mom, why don't you buy me some stuff? My provider buys me all this stuff. No, parents aren't bugging you to spend more money. In some cases, I've seen for some providers, their spending can be excessive. When I look at sometimes providers' tax return, they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on toys and other supplies stuff year after year after year. One provider said she bought tons of stuff. She had a house full of stuff. And one day she went out and bought something and came home only to realize she had already bought it before. In other words, she had no idea what she had, and she was buying things twice. So that was a wake-up call for her. So she cleaned out her house, figured out what she had so that she wouldn't buy things again. If you think of the last time you bought something that was really exciting to you, really gave you a thrill, you know, a big screen TV or an outdoor grill or I don't know, whatever it is, a big thrill. How long did that emotional high last? Probably not very long at all. That's why we tell people not to shop when you're not to shop for food when you're hungry, because you're more likely to spend more money. All right. You can start saving small amounts of money. In my opinion, sometimes the hardest step to take in beginning to save money and start saving for retirement is that first step of just beginning. So I say start small. It's easier later to add to your savings. But if you're starting small, you're getting started and you're establishing a habit and saving on a regular basis, monthly, it'll make a difference. So if you save $5 a day, 5 days a week, you'll have $1,250 at the end of the year. If you put that $25 a week into an IRA, an individual retirement account, which we'll talk about later, and let's just say it earns 8% a year, in 10 years, you'll have $19,000. So money grows over time, but it'll only grow if you start with something. In working on my book, I asked the providers for their ideas, their strategies. How did they save money? One provider said, I had parents bring supplies for my business that I would normally have to buy, and thus it saved me money. So the parents are bringing construction paper and crayons and scissors and stuff like that. Another provider said, I would always have a pretty elaborate, fancy birthday party, which everybody enjoyed. But she said, it cost me a bunch of money. So one day she said, I told parents, look, here's a list of the things we need for the next birthday party to have a nice birthday party. And every parent's got to bring something on this list. Somebody's bring the birthday cake, the juice, the decorations, and so on. And the parents agreed to do it. And she said she's never spent a dime on birthday parties after that. Now, why were the parents willing to bring stuff for these birthday parties? She said it was because they realized that their child was going to get a nice birthday as long as they were bringing stuff so other children could have a nice birthday. And they're all willing to do it. Another provider said she would make a point of not spending a windfall. Instead, she would save it. A windfall is something that you didn't plan on getting at the beginning of the year. Could be a tax refund, could be a coupon, it could be somebody gave you cash for your birthday, it could be a late pickup fee, I don't know, could be something that you didn't think you were going to get it, but there it is, you got a little bit of money. You save it, you don't spend it. Another provider said, well, I would put the nickels and the change and the quarters into a piggy bank. And then when I, then take it to the bank to cash it out, she would save it. It was just like a way of saving money, forcing herself to save. One of the things I do to force myself to save is when I go to my bank's ATM and I take out money, I won't take out more than $40 unless I'm traveling. $40. I don't want more than $40 in my wallet because that will help me control my spending. All right. So I'm out shopping and I'm using some cash and I don't have, I've only got 10 or 20 bucks left. So no, I can't buy that because I don't have the cash. See, I'm just tricking myself into controlling my spending by not having a lot on me. When I've gone out, now more than a year ago on trainings, right? And I'm out there on the road talking and I'm bringing my books along and I'm selling my books. It's not uncommon for a provider to buy one of my books with a $100 bill. And I can't even imagine having a $100 bill. If I did, I think it would be much easier for me to spend it. There are online places that you can get advice about saving. The Frugal Shopper, simpleliving.net. You can go crazy with this. I'm not telling you to go overboard. I'm not telling you never to buy flowers, never to go out to eat, never go to movies because you got to save that penny. No, I'm not saying that. So if you want to, get into this even more, of course, there's a lot of other things you could do. And one of my favorite quotes was from a provider who said, when I go out looking to buy something for my business, before I buy it, she'll say, I'll ask myself this question: will buying this thing improve my business or entice parents to my program, or will it not matter? Because she says, if it's not going to matter, I won't buy it. And that's a way for her to kind of check herself before she spends money. Somebody says, I buy supplies and at the end of the year, I claim it on my taxes. Yes, yes. I know you're not saying this, but it reminds me of a provider who said, it was like September or October in the year. And she said, Tom, I realized I haven't been spending as much on my supplies this year as I did last year. And so I'm thinking I need to go out and buy a bunch more supplies. Otherwise, I'm going to pay more in taxes. And I said, no, that's a bad idea. Don't spend money to get a deduction. If you need to buy something, okay, fine. But if you spend $100, your taxes are not going to go down by $100. So you're always better off not spending something than spending it, even if you can deduct it. Question: how many credit cards do you recommend a person to have? Well, studies indicate that if you have a retail store credit card, right, Walmart, Target, and so on, you're more likely to spend more money because you have a store credit card. I don't think there's any right answer to your question about how many. Let's see. I have a business credit card. My wife and I have a joint credit card. And my wife recently got another credit card just to put larger purchases on to get cash back. But that's only been the last couple of months. Otherwise, for all our years of marriage, we've only had a total of 2. I take that back. She has a Target credit card because we do a lot of shopping at Target. Okay. So I don't know, and not very many, because the more you have, the more you're likely to spend. And I'll talk a little bit more about credit cards later. Which is the best one? You can go online and look for credit card rates in terms of interest rates, which credit cards have lower interest. All right. Next. All right, let's just finish saying something about managing money in general. Now I want to talk a little bit about short-term savings goals. If you're starting to get a habit of saving some money, the next thing to think about is, when do you need the money? Because that'll make a difference in where you put the money. Because we want to make our money work as hard for us as we can. So I'm breaking down when into short-term goals and then long-term goals, meaning retirement. So a short-term savings goal is, you'll need the money probably within 1 to 5 years. What might that be in your situation? It could be setting up an emergency fund, buying a car, or creating a car replacement fund, making a down payment on a house, making a home improvement, taking a really nice vacation, whatever. The goal, if you need the money in 1 to 5 years, should be the preservation of the money. We don't want to lose any of the money. So we don't want to put it somewhere where its value could go down when we need it. And we need the money readily accessible. If we need it now, we need to be able to get it now and not worry that it might have lost some of its value at the time. Therefore, we want to put money where there's going to be a low risk that it's going to go down in value. But that's also going to mean low return. We're not going to earn much interest at all on short-term savings. Here are 4 short-term savings options to think about. You could put it in your bank, a bank savings account. And as we all know, the interest rate is very, very low, less than 0.5% probably. There's no risk because the deposits are insured. The government will insure. You'll never lose money. There's no penalty for taking it out. You can take money out of your bank instantly that day. If you want to look for a little higher interest rates, you could go online and put your money in an online savings account in a bank. And if you look at ingdirect.com, that'll give you some ideas about where you could go, probably to get a higher rate than your bank would give you. Secondly, a money market fund. A money market fund might be available through your bank. It is available through retirement companies, we'll talk about in a minute, mutual fund companies that have a money market fund. It's a very low risk because it's usually invested in government securities. Low risk. Again, low return, less than 1% at this point. No penalty for getting it out early, so that's good. They're not insured. It's not insured. It's possible you could lose money here, but it hasn't happened in decades. Option number 3, a certificate of deposit, a CD. You can get a CD for a period of time, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. If you want a 5-year CD, that means you'll put your money into the CD and it's going to stay there for 5 years. And the interest rate now is right about 1.5%. No risk. Your money's insured. You get a little bit higher return, but for most CDs, there is a penalty if you try to take it out before, in this example, 5 years. The last option I'm calling a short-term bond fund. A bond fund is like an IOU. You give the money to somebody, they promise to pay you a certain rate of return at the end of a period of time. Lower risk, higher return than these other options. No penalty for taking it out early. They're not insured. Bond funds can be available again through mutual fund companies, probably not banks, maybe. A bond is an IOU issued by a city, a state, a corporation. Well, what do we make sense of those four choices? The money market fund and the short-term bond fund are more flexible with a higher rate of return compared to money in the bank. If you don't need money for at least a year, a CD, like a 1-year CD or 2-year CD, or a short-term bond fund can deliver a higher rate of return. But if you need this money in an emergency fund, you don't want it in a CD. Getting out of debt. My father always said to me, Tom, there's only 3 things you should ever borrow money for in your life. And that is a house, an improvement to your home, or an education. Why? Because in general, those 3 things will increase in value over time. The value of a house in general goes up over time. And right now, wow, houses are going up dramatically. Home improvements will tend to increase the value of the home. And education, in general, over time, pays for itself. That is, the more education you have, in general, the more money you can make, the more opportunities you have. That's how he explained it to me. So then he said, anything that doesn't increase in value goes down in value over time, and we call that unacceptable debt. You should never borrow money for those things that decrease in value, and that's virtually everything else. If you went to the bank and said, I want to borrow money for a toaster. I need to buy a new toaster, and it's going to cost me $89. I want a loan for my toaster. Well, of course not. No bank's going to loan you money for a toaster, because if you're making monthly payments on the toaster and a month later you can't make the payment, the toaster's worth practically nothing. Think about a car. If you buy a car, drive it off the lot, drive it around the corner, and go back to the dealer and say, I want to sell you this car, you'll get a lot less money for it because the value of it goes down. Now, of course, this is not what our society talks about. Our society says, oh, you can borrow money for everything. You can borrow money for your vacation. Wow. And this is just bad advice. This is just really, really bad advice. Credit cards. In my opinion, and I should have said this when I started, I'm not your financial planner, I did say that, but also there are no, there's no rules here that you must follow. Meaning anything I say, if you don't like it, that's okay. You don't have to agree with me. And before you make any significant money decision, don't base it on what I say. Do your own investigation. And if you don't understand what you're doing with your money, like I've just talked about a money market fund. And if you don't know what a money market fund is, don't put money there until you find out, until you get more information, so you do understand it. If you don't know what a short-term bond fund is, don't put money in a short-term bond fund until you do. And it's okay to just wait. Okay, I'm just going to keep that money under my mattress in my bank account until I figure out and understand better what are my options. All right, credit cards. In my opinion, not paying off your credit cards in full at the end of each month is a sign of overspending. I once talked to a financial planner, and I said, what is the question people ask you the most? And he said, well, when I would go out and meet people socially, and they would find out that I'm a financial planner, they would ask me always, well, give me a hot tip. Give me a hot tip. You're a financial planner. You know about money. What should I do? And he said, my answer is always the same. Pay off your credit cards. That's the most important first step you can take before you do anything else. And he said he wouldn't even take on a new client until they paid off their credit cards. Why is this so important? Credit card interest, what, 15, 20% or more? This makes it difficult to save money if you're paying a lot in credit card interest. So if you look back at your last year's tax return, see how much interest you might have paid on credit cards. That is money that could have been put aside for your retirement. Having a high monthly balance that you're not paying off at the end of each month also hurts you because it decreases your credit rating. If you're going to borrow money for something else, you're going to pay a higher interest rate on a car loan, on a new mortgage for your house, on a home equity loan. You're going to pay higher interest because you have credit card debt. Somebody said, yeah, I finally got credit card debt paid off. Great. During the pandemic, many providers use their credit cards to stay in business. Yeah, I know. This has been an incredibly difficult financial year. I get that. I get that. We'll talk about how to try to move on from this. There is some, here's the opportunity for me to say this. There's some hope on the near horizon here. At the last big stimulus bill that passed Congress, they added $39 billion for childcare that's going out to all the states. So Connecticut's going to get several millions of dollars of new childcare money. And it's likely that they'll use some of that money for grants. And so watch for that. Pay attention to childcare resource and referral people. Listen, what's happening? Because this could happen pretty shortly, within the next month or so. I don't know exactly how Connecticut's going to use its money, but it's likely, it's quite possible, some of the money is going to come down in terms of grants that you don't have to pay back. So you want that money. And that can be hopefully financial relief so you can pay off these credit card debts. That would be one of the assuming you can use the money for that, I would use it to pay off any credit cards. What's going on here? If you had a $5,000 balance on your credit card and it was 18% interest and you made a $100 minimum monthly payment, it would take you 30 years to pay it off. And you'd pay over $17,500. Wow, that's such a killer. Credit card interest. Rebecca says there's grant funding available through the Office of Early Childhood that will be released shortly. Terrific, terrific. There's some other good news that let me jump in here as well. Maybe you already know about this. Starting in July, if you're on the food program and you're getting the lower tier 2 rate, you will start getting the higher tier 1 rate for the next 12 months. And the higher tier rate is about twice as much as the lower rate. So this is great. This would be fantastic for people who are currently getting the lower reimbursement rate. And if you're not on the food program, this is another reason to get on the food program, because no matter where you live, no matter what, don't worry about getting the lower rate. You will get the higher rate. And the higher rate means if you're serving breakfast, lunch, and a snack every day, you're going to get close to $1,300 per child per year. All right. Enough good news. So what else? You want to kick the credit card habit. So you got credit card debt, let's say. Now what? Well, I would say right off the bat, try not to go any further into debt. So, okay, maybe you can't pay off the past debt now right away. All right, but for the next month, whatever you buy, you should make sure you pay that off in full. Don't go further into debt if you can. And as I said before, you're likely to spend more money with retail store credit cards, so throw them away. Although my wife and I are keeping our Target credit card. If you're paying a high interest rate, you can always call up your credit card company and say, you know what, I'm shopping around and I think I can get a lower rate. Please lower my interest rate. Asking for a lower interest rate is not unreasonable. You might get a lower rate just by asking. You can shop around. Here's creditcards.com, bankrate.com. Those are places that will identify credit cards with lower interest rates. Maybe you're using a debit card, which is good. It acts like a check. So the only thing to worry about there is you don't want to overdraft because you'll pay fees. So fees are like interest. We don't want to pay fees associated with debit cards. If you need further help, there's a nonprofit organization, debitreductionservices.org, that has a lot of good information online that can help you manage debt. You could prioritize debt. Let's say you've got credit card interest, car loan payments, house payments, student loans, did I say that? So now what? Well, you might want to list all your debts in order of highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. And maybe you want to start paying off the highest interest rate debt first, which is likely to be credit cards. Okay, that will save you more interest in the short run. Or you could look at what's the smallest amount of debt, regardless of the interest rate, and pay that off first. Why? Because that might help and motivate you, give you an incentive. Oh, I did that, now let's tackle the next one. There's no right or wrong about this. I would certainly pay off credit card debt before trying to make extra payments on your mortgage. And in my opinion, if you got credit card debt and you want to save for retirement, I would do a little of each. I wouldn't use all of my savings to paying off credit cards, and I wouldn't use all my savings for IRAs. You want to take the tax advantage of the IRA, and you still want to try to reduce the interest you're paying. So I do, in my opinion, some of both. If you need more help, if you need individual face-to-face help, credit counseling services can help you deal with overall debt and your circumstances. United Way is a place to go for referrals about this. All right, so let me pause here before we get into more specifics about retirement. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and say something, great. I'm ready to listen. Everybody's excited. By the way, this new funding that's coming down from the federal government, it's highly likely in a very short period of time, I will be doing a free webinar about it and how to deal with grant money and what are the tax implications and how you cope with getting grants, and explaining a little bit more about how they're going to work. So watch for that on my website. Okay. Now let's talk about retirement. When is the first day you should start saving for your retirement? When's the first best day? Today. When's the next best day? Tomorrow. The sooner you start saving for your retirement, the less you'll have to save. And as we all know, money grows over time, but let's look at this example. Faye and Fred are twins. Faye starts saving for her retirement at age 35. She saves $2,000 a year for 10 years. She's saved 20,000. Her money earns 8% a year. When she gets to be 65, she'll have $135,000. Fred, her twin, waits 10 years and he starts saving when he's 45. He saves 2,000 a year for 20 years. He saved 40,000. When he's 65, the same time as Faye, and his money is earned 8% a year, he's going to have 91,000. He saved twice as much money, but has a third less because he waited. He waited. It's not so much about how much interest you're going to earn on your money, is when you started saving and how much you started saving. Well, again, I asked providers, how do they try to save money for retirement? Okay, provider said, well, I started saving monthly. I just got into this habit, monthly amount for retirement. Another provider said, at the beginning of every year, I look at my kids, and I pick out one of the kids and I say, you're my retirement baby. And all the money I get from you is going into my retirement this year. Another provider said, I saved a food program check. That's my retirement. Another provider said, half my food program check. Another provider said, to make it easy so I don't have to think about it, I just made regular direct deposits from my bank account into a retirement account. Another provider said, I dedicate any extra money to retirement, kind of like a windfall, but in this case, extra money to her meant a registration fee, a field trip fee, a supply fee, late pickup fee, you're giving me a headache fee, any extra fees that she collected, retirement. Another provider said, I think this is good advice, she tried to put as much money as she could into her retirement at the beginning of the year, not at the end of the year. Why? The sooner you begin saving, the better. So if you're putting money into your IRA for 2021, you should be putting it in now rather than near the end of the year, because then you'll get more months of it earning interest. And over time, over many, many years, the sooner in the year you put the money aside, the better. All right. Well, how much are you going to need for your retirement? As everybody probably knows, most providers aren't saving enough for their retirement. Most people in general aren't saving enough for their own retirement. How much will you need? Well, experts say you'll need maybe 70 to 80% of your current income in retirement. In other words, if you want to maintain the same standard of living that you have now, you're going to need about 70 to 80% of that when you retire. Why? Well, some expenses are going to go down when you retire. Clothing, car expenses, housing costs, other expenses are going to go up, medical expenses. In general, when people retire in their first couple of years of retirement, their spending probably goes up because they're now taking the long vacation that they always wanted to do, or they bought the summer cabin, or they do things that they've been waiting to do, and so they're spending a little bit more. But then as they get older, people's spending in general goes down. My 95-year-old mother is not spending very much money. And we're not going to take hiking down the Grand Canyon when we're in our 80s for most of us. So, we can expect our spending to go down and not needing as much as we get older. Now, having said that, my father for a while was a financial planner, and we would talk about this stuff all the time. So when he retired, I said to him, okay, Dad, now how much do you need in retirement? Is it 70%? Is it 80%? What is it? He said, 100%. So I think 70 to 80 is still a reasonable estimate. Now, women in general are going to need to save more money than men. Women tend to live long. My 95-year-old mother. My father lived to be 85. Women tend to earn less over their lifetime. And as a result, their Social Security benefit in general is going to be lower. That means they need other money for retirement. Because women live longer in general, they have more medical expenses. So this puts more pressure on women. How can you get a better handle on your situation? If you haven't done this before, I think it's a good thing to use some of these online retirement calculators that will tell you how much you need to save to have enough in retirement. And here's the 3 examples. And you go there and you put in, okay, what is your age? How much do you want to live on when you retire? How much you can expect to get from Social Security? And some other questions. And then it'll say, all right, based on a bunch of assumptions, you'll need to save X amount of dollars each month from now until when you want to retire to get where you want to go. Now, I want to caution people, if you haven't already done this, if you're using these calculators, kind of watch out, because usually, and it's my experience, you'll get to the end and it'll say you need to save whatever, $800 a month. I mean, just a crazy number that you'll say, oh no. Even $500 a month, you might say, oh no. So don't freak out about it, because you go back into those calculators and you revise some things. And what do most people do to try to make ends meet? Because you're going to live in retirement on the money you have in retirement. Most people will, when they look at the facts of life about this, tend to work a little longer or plan on living on less. So my in-laws, my father-in-law was thinking of retiring. He worked at a college, and before he decided to retire, he went and talked to a financial planner who said, okay, you know what? If you work 1 more year, this is the impact it'll have on Social Security benefit. This is the impact it'll have on your pension and on your retirement savings and so on. And he thought, I really didn't want to work that extra year, but wow, I can see what a difference it's going to make. That's what he did. My wife has had some good friends for all her life, and her friend and she used to work at a company, and the friend made a lot of money, made over $100,000 a year. She retired early. She had a very small pension, claimed Social Security, but her spending habits before she retired were to just spend money, and hardly had any other savings. She retires. She continued to spend money. And pretty soon, a couple of years after she retired, she realized, I'm running out of money. So now she's working 20 hours a week in a liquor store. It's not uncommon for us to see people of retirement age saying to us, welcome to Walmart, would you like fries with that? Because they're probably getting Social Security, but that's not enough. They got to continue to work, even though they're of an age where they might be wanted to retire perhaps. So people tend to work a little longer than they planned. People tend to live on a little bit less than they planned, because most people aren't saving enough at a young enough age. I wasn't serious about saving for my retirement until I got married, and I was in my 30s. And after that, now I need to start thinking about this. It's never too late. It's never too late. You want to take responsibility for your retirement planning. It's not something we were taught, for the most part, by our parents. Did our parents give us a solid foundation in money management and retirement planning? I don't think so. Did we get that in school? Yeah, I don't think so. So where are we getting this? And that's, most people are not that familiar with how to make intelligent decisions about money and retirement. But if you're a woman, it's highly likely that there'll be a time in your life that you'll be solely responsible for your money. And so my mother-in-law is 92, so we're handling her money. Don't, as I said already, don't invest in anything you don't understand. If you don't understand something, do not do it. If you want to get a start with money, you know, just a really, really good book to get started. Personal Finance for Dummies, Eric Tyson, is terrific. It's simple. It's excellent. It's wise. It's good information. Anything he's written is great. He's written other books about IRAs and other retirement. Any book he's written a bunch, is excellent. You might want to take a financial planning class. Your community college, your library, you might get something in the mail or see something that says so-and-so is coming to town to talk about retirement or Social Security or estate planning or something. I think it's a good idea to go to those things because they'll usually give you a whole lot of written material that can be very helpful in educating yourself. You may want to join an investment club, a women's investment club. I just was watching a PBS show the other night about Amy Tan, the Joy Luck Club. That was an investment club. Women tend to be better investors than men because women are less emotional about money. Men tend to brag about money. Oh, I did this, I did great, but they're more impulsive and therefore they make more mistakes. Women are more cautious, which is good, and meeting with other women to talk about money, that's good. There are lots of places on the internet you can get more information. Think about money management, think about retirement savings as a lifetime learning. I continue to read articles about retirement and money. I've been doing that for many, many, many years. You know, I learn things all the time. It's not something you can all absorb right away. So just say to yourself, every year I'm going to do a little bit better of understanding more about my money and more about my retirement. So now let's be specific about where to put your money. You want the vast majority of your money saved for retirement invested through an IRA, an individual retirement account. It's the single biggest tax benefit you'll get in your life. What you're doing is taking advantage of the tax benefit that allows you to defer paying taxes on your investment and its interest for many, many, many years. And as a result, that interest is earning interest on interest, and you're accumulating more money faster. You can invest for retirement with an IRA in almost anything: stocks, bonds, real estate, gold, all kinds of things. You pick a fund, a place to put the money, and then you label it your IRA. That's going to be my IRA. I'm going to get the tax benefit by putting my money here that I call my IRA. Here's how it works. You make a contribution. You put some money in. Again, you can put it in almost anything, a fund. You'll get an immediate tax deduction for that contribution, with the exception of a Roth IRA, which we'll talk about in a minute. All right, so now your investment is earning some interest. Depending on how it's invested, depending on what happens that year, it's going to earn some money, earn some interest. And you won't pay tax on that interest every year. If you're not investing in an IRA and you earn some interest, you do pay tax on that interest each year. But no, we're deferring paying tax on that interest. At 59.5, you can take the money out. And at that time, you're going to pay tax on the contribution amount that you take out and on the interest you take out. You're paying tax on both of those things when you take it out. That's how an IRA works. Here's the significant benefit of an IRA. Let's say you put aside $5,000 a year for 20 years. And let's say it earns 8% each year. I'm using 8% in all my examples here, just to be consistent, not to say you will always earn 8%. There's no guarantee about this. So I'm just using 8% as an example. If you put that money in a fund that you did not label your IRA, you did not take the tax advantage of the IRA, you'd have 129,000 bucks after 20 years. But if you had labeled it your IRA and took advantage of the tax benefit, you'd have 164,000. Same fund, same interest, but you've got what, $35,000 more, plus the tax benefit each year of that contribution. That's significant. That's why you want most of your money in an IRA. So here are 4 options, 4 common options for an IRA. You could put money in what's called a regular or a traditional IRA. There might be some income limitations. If you're married and your spouse has a retirement plan at work, then your family's adjusted gross income has to be less than 125,000. If your spouse doesn't have a retirement plan at work, you have to be making less than 208,000. If you're single, you're always eligible for a regular IRA. You can put aside up to $6,000 a year, or an extra $1,000 if you're age 50 or older. You don't have to put in $6,000 every year or even to start. You can start with very small amounts of money, and there are a number of places you can start with no minimum contribution to start. You can just set one up right away for 10 bucks, 100 bucks. Again, regular IRA, it's tax deductible when you put the money in. You're going to pay taxes on all of it when you take it out. Next, the simple IRA. There's no income eligibility limit, so everybody is eligible for a simple IRA. The maximum you can contribute is $13,500, or an extra $3,000 if you're age 50 or older. Now, any contribution to any IRA can't be more than your actual profit in a year. So if you only made $10,000 one year, you couldn't put aside more than 10 into a simple IRA. It works just like the regular IRA in that it's tax deductible. You pay taxes later. One extra thing to say about the simple IRA is if you have employees and set up a simple for yourself, you may have to make a contribution to your employees' simple IRA, depending on how many years they work for you and how much you've paid them. The SEP IRA, a simplified employee pension. No income eligibility limits, everybody's eligible. You can put aside 18.5% of your profit. So if you had a $10,000 profit, you could put aside $1,858. $20,000 profit, $3,600. So as you can see, the regular IRA or the simple IRA for most people is going to be a lot better than this, because you're not going to be able to contribute as much to a SEP until your profit is closer to 70 or 80,000. It's also tax deductible, same thing, pay taxes later, same thing. The last IRA is the Roth IRA. And this one's different. There are some income eligibility limits. If you're married, filing jointly, your adjusted gross income has to be less than 208,000. If you're single, your profit has to be less than 140,000. Now, if you're single and listening to me now, and you made a profit of more than $140,000 last year, give me a call, send me an email. I want to write a story about you. Congratulations. The maximum you can contribute is $6,000, or an extra $1,000 if you're age 50. Okay, here's the difference. It's not tax deductible. When you put the money into a Roth IRA, you do not get immediate tax deduction. No. All right. Interest is earning interest, deferred, up. When you take it out at 59.5, you do not pay tax on the contribution because you've already paid tax on that. And you don't pay tax on the interest. No tax later. Now, why is this important? Because I really like the Roth. When you retire and you start claiming Social Security, you're going to pay tax on most of that Social Security benefit. If you are working after you retire, a part-time job doing something else, you're going to still pay tax on that. If you take money out of any other IRA, you're going to pay tax on that. If your spouse has a 401k plan, that's an IRA, and you take money out of that, you're going to pay tax on that. So virtually all the money you're getting in retirement now, you're paying taxes on. And that could be an unpleasant surprise. Well, but you won't pay tax on if the money is a Roth IRA. So by being able to take money out that you're not paying taxes on, you can plan to keep your tax bracket a little lower and just reduce the tax burden later. Here's another reason I like the Roth IRA. If I said to you, marshmallow study, would you know what I'm talking about? Google marshmallow study. It's hilarious. It was a study done like 40 or 50 years ago, like at Stanford, a university someplace, where they brought kids into a room, preschoolers, and they put a marshmallow on the table in front of them. And they said, I'm going to leave the room. When I come back, if this marshmallow was still here, I'll give you another one. And they filmed it. And that's what's so hilarious, because some kids just eat it right away. Some kids sniffed it and they licked it, or they put their heads in their hand and they're just moaning. Great fun. It's hilarious. The people left for 90 seconds. When they came back, they gave them another marshmallow if they hadn't eaten it. Now, they tracked these kids for the last 30, 40, 50 years. One of the most significant results is that those kids who did not eat the marshmallow are significantly better off financially. They have more wealth. They're earning more money. What's going on? As somebody indicated already, delayed gratification, self-control. And they've replicated the study, and other people have said one of the most important factors of success in life for anybody is delayed gratification, self-control. And that's what the Roth IRA is. Those people who contribute to a Roth IRA are those people who don't eat the marshmallow. They're giving up a benefit now to get a bigger benefit later. So that's why I like the Roth. Now, you can have a Roth IRA and a regular IRA, but you can't contribute more than $6,000 in a year. You can contribute to the Roth IRA and the simple IRA at the same time, $13,500 plus $6,000. You can do the Roth and the SEP IRA in 1 year. What else? If you're married and your spouse works for a company that offers a retirement plan and is making a contribution to that, is putting in money on behalf of your spouse, 1% of salary, 2% of salary, whatever, something like that. In my opinion, the most important financial decision you should always make every year is to make sure your spouse is contributing enough to his retirement to get the maximum employer match. That, above all, is the most important thing you can do. Why? It's free money. It's free money. Next, if you've done that, great. And in my opinion, just my opinion, the next thing to do would be to set up a Roth IRA and make the maximum contribution, $6,000. You don't need to make that much to start with. You don't need to make that any particular amount every year. It can be up and down. I'm just saying, as a goal, the next step would be maximize your contribution to a Roth IRA. If you have additional money to save for retirement, then either make more contributions to the employer plan or set up a simple IRA. And that decision would be based on what are the options for the funds that you can invest in through the employer, and what are the fees that the employer fund charges, because the lower fees, the better. Now, one other thing. I've written an article on my website, Where Should I Invest My Money for Retirement? And I don't go into this in detail here because I don't have time, but that article, Where Should I Invest My Money for Retirement? Gives you an overview, assuming you don't, well, Tom, okay, you got me, I'm going to put some money aside. Now, where do I go? And this tells you the kinds of funds that you should invest in and the companies that have these funds. I would direct you there to tell you where to go to put your money. What else? Savers credit. This is a tax credit for low income taxpayers providers. It's a double tax benefit for making a contribution to any IRA. You're going to get the regular IRA tax break, but now a credit on top of that. It's for low income folks. Low income means if you're married and filing jointly, your adjusted gross income, your profit, and your spouse's gross income has to be less than $66,000. If you're single, your profit has to be less than $33,000. You can make a contribution to any IRA, 401k plan, Roth IRA, regular IRA, simple IRA, whatever, anything, up to $2,000 for this credit. And depending on how low your income is, you get a 10, 20, or 50% tax credit on top of the normal tax benefit. So every year I write about this. You can go to my website and search Savers Credit. You'll see articles about it. It's a significant tax break every year. If you were financially eligible for this in earlier years and didn't take advantage of this credit, you can amend your tax return and get the credit now. All right. Social Security. We need to understand a little bit about Social Security, because one of the most important decisions you can make in your life, financial decision, is when to start claiming Social Security benefits. It's a major decision. So let's learn a little bit about it. You can start claiming Social Security benefits as early as age 62. Your full retirement age is either age 66 or 67, depending on when you were born. Now, financial difficulty that many folks are in. Maybe you were planning on claiming Social Security benefits later than age 62, later than your full retirement age, maybe. But in these financial hard times, some people may be tempted to say, wait a minute, I am eligible for Social Security now. I previously thought I should wait a little longer, but boy, I could use that money now. Let's claim Social Security now. Well, if you claim Social Security before your full retirement age and continue to work, and if you earn more than $18,960 this year, your benefit's going to be a little bit lower. It's going to be a little bit lower. But Social Security is weird because later, after your full retirement age, you will get it back. So it's a goofy thing, but you need to be aware of what's going on. So when should you claim Social Security? Ideally, age 70. Why? The longer you wait to claim Social Security, the more you're going to get. You can't get more from Social Security after age 70. For every year you wait after age 62, your Social Security benefit goes up. And in the years between your full retirement age and age 70, your benefit goes up by 8% a year, a big jump on those last few years. So there's always an incentive to wait. This is all good, more, and then whoop, a bunch more. So that's why, if you can, ideally, you want to wait. Now, maybe you can't wait. All right, you got health issues, you got other concerns. Okay, fine, I understand. But we need to understand the consequences. So, in my opinion, I would strongly recommend you do your homework by doing these two things. Go to the Social Security website, socialsecurity.gov. If you haven't already created your own account, you can create one easily. It'll show you an annual Social Security statement for yourself. It will say how much you can expect to get at age 62, your full retirement age, or age 70. So you'll see how much it'll grow the longer you wait. Now, those numbers are based on the assumption that the amount you earned in 2019 is going to be the same each year until you reach those ages. So if you're 35 and you're planning on making more money over the course of your lifetime, then your Social Security benefit you'll see each year that go up. The amount you're going to get from Social Security is based on the highest 35 years of earnings over your life. And your statement will show for every year that you worked, how much money you made that year. So you want to look at that to make sure there are numbers there where there should be. One provider said, Tom, in the last 3 years, there's zeros. And I said, well, were you working? Yeah, I was doing childcare. Well, were you making a profit? Because you have to be making a profit to show a Social Security benefit there. And she said, yeah. I said, well, that means you didn't file the proper tax return at the end of each year, those last 3 years. You should be filing a Form 1040 SE. S as in simple, E as in Elizabeth. And that's a form that shows how much you owe in Social Security tax. And that tax is added on to your other taxes on your Form 1040. You're not sending a check directly to Social Security. But without that form being filed and without paying the Social Security tax on that form, you're not going to get credit for that when determining your benefit from Social Security. Question, can you still work and collect income while you're age 70? Yeah, so any money you earn after your full retirement age will not affect your Social Security benefit. If you work after your age 70, that won't increase your benefit. Yeah, okay. Next, step 2. Once you've done that, then I strongly recommend you go to this next website, opensocialsecurity.com. It's a free online calculator that will tell you when is the best time for you and your spouse to collect Social Security to get the biggest amount from Social Security over the course of your life. You go in there, you put your name, your age, how much Social Security says you will get at your full retirement age. That's why you got to do step 1 first. And a little bit more information, not much. And then it'll tell you immediately when the year and month each of you, if you're married, should start claiming Social Security to get the most from Social Security over your life, making some assumptions about how long you're going to live. All right. So I got to tell you, this was an eye-opener, a revelation to me and my wife. My wife is 4 years younger than me. Our plan was always, I would start claiming Social Security when I was age 70, and she would claim it at the same time, and she would be 66. That was our plan forever. Well, few years ago, we went onto this website, put it in, and it said, no, your wife should start claiming Social Security earlier than age 66. And at that time, I could claim half of her benefit until I got to be age 70, and then I would get my full benefit. In other words, I was still going to get what I was entitled to get at age 70. That wasn't going to be any less. But now there are a number of years where I would be entitled to claim half of her benefit as a spousal benefit. I'd never heard of it. I thought I understood a lot about Social Security. I didn't. So I thought, well, I don't want to just rely on what the calculator says, gee, this is a big deal. So I went to our financial planner and I said, look, here's what they say. Is this right? And she said, yes. So I said, okay, but I still wanted more reassurance. So I contacted my local Social Security office. I went downtown, had an appointment. I went face to face and I said, okay, if we do this, is this right? I'm going to get half of her benefit and then I can still get what I was entitled to? Yes. So that's our plan. She's going to get a little less than what she would have gotten if she waited until she was 66. But that was going to be more than outweighed by the extra amount I was going to get by getting half of her benefit. Why? I can't explain it to you. I don't know why. So I don't know what your situation will be, but you got to check it out. You got to know exactly when the best time is if you can do it. Again, maybe you have to claim it earlier than it says. Maybe you have other things going on. Okay. But don't make the mistake that a friend of mine made. She retired from work at 65, I think, 65. She then took Social Security. However, her husband was working. He made a lot of money. They had enough money. She took her Social Security check and put it in a savings account. I'm going, what? If you don't need the money, don't take Social Security earlier. But that's what they did. Okay, they're doing okay. But boy, they could have gotten more out of Social Security if they waited. Question, what's a website to figure out the optimum year? OpenSocialSecurity.com. This webinar is being recorded. You'll have access to the PowerPoint slides as well. If you collect your benefit and continue to work, my benefit will increase, change, or will continue to be the same benefit. Let me think about that for a second. Once you start claiming, here's my understanding of it, and I got to tell you, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, so don't hold me to this, but my understanding is this. Once you make the decision to start claiming Social Security, it's going to be based on the previous best 35 years of earnings. So even if you earn more money after that, that won't increase your benefit. Now, Social Security every year, they might get a 0.5% interest or 1% cost of living increase for everybody. But once you start claiming Social Security, I don't think you can increase your benefit by earning more money. It's another reason, if you think you're earning more money, to wait. Now, you can also go onto the Social Security website and say, all right, I'm 52, so I'm 10 years away from when I can start claiming Social Security. It tells me how much I would get at age 62, but that's based on my previous 35 years. So what if I'm going to earn more money between now and then? You could plug in their calculator. Well, I think I'm going to earn this much more or this much more after 62. So you can plug in your own numbers for what you think your income's going to be to get a better estimate from Social Security on how much you're going to get before you make that decision. All right, that was Social Security. Lastly, I want to say a few words about financial goals. Most people spend more time planning their next vacation than planning for retirement. My wife and I just got a thing in the mail yesterday about, I don't know what it, Road Scholar, I don't know what it's called, about trips. So guided trips you can take all across the country. So we are fantasizing about, going to all these places on vacation and spending money. All right. So when I first started talking, I started talking about developing a savings habit. And great. Okay. Maybe, hopefully you're already doing that. You're doing that. But next, it's important to think about financial goals. It sounds simple, but people who set financial goals, write them down, are more likely to achieve them than people who just talk about it. So here's what I'm recommending. Last exercise. We got more than half of the year to go. If you haven't already done this, I would sit down and think, what are my financial goals from now till the end of the year? And they could be a whole variety of things. And here's some examples. Well, let's make sure we contribute that employer match to get the maximum match from the employer. Maybe we need to get liability insurance. We don't have liability insurance now. Or we need to up our coverage for car insurance or something else. Or, yeah, we need to pay off our credit card debt. Or let's establish a 3-month emergency fund or a car replacement fund. I mentioned cars earlier, and I said, ideally, you should pay cash for a car because it decreases in value quickly after you buy it. Well, most people aren't paying cash for their car. They're, all the ads say just so much down payment and so much per month. Well, not a good idea. So what do? Well, if you're normally putting down, I don't know, 10%, 20% down and borrowing the rest, start putting some money aside for the next car. And next time, try to go to 30, maybe 40% down, 60% down. Eventually, your goal, your long-term goal, should be paying cash for the car. So maybe your goal this year is to put aside a certain amount of money for the next car. Save for retirement. Obviously, that's a financial goal. Save for your child's college education. You could have a lot of different goals. So let me say a few things about this. In my opinion, saving for college should be at the bottom of the list. That you should not be saving money for your child's college education unless you're successfully dealing with all your other financial needs. I give you permission not to do that, not to save for college. Why? Well, when you're ready to retire, can you go to your bank and say, I'm going to retire next week. I need a retirement loan to help me pay for my retirement. No, of course not. But there are many, many ways your child could get through college. Go to a cheaper school, scholarships, work study, borrow money, student loans. And I think those things are reasonable rather than you sacrificing more than is necessary. If you're a woman, caring for kids in daycare, caring for your own child, caring for your spouse, caring for your in-laws, your parents maybe, it's time, I think, to be more serious about caring for yourself, meaning dealing with your financial needs rather than sacrificing that for your child. That's my opinion. Now, you set the goal. Let's let me go back here. Let's say your goal is we're going to pay off half our credit card debt and a week of a 3-month emergency fund. A 3-month emergency fund means what's the bare minimum you need to live on each month? How much is 3 months of that? That's your long-term goal, to have that money set aside. Think of if you'd had that amount set aside last year, life would have been a lot easier. My wife and I took years and years and years before we got a 3-month emergency fund. We had nothing in the fund for many years. And then we said, well, wait a minute. Every year we're getting a tax refund. And we were just spending it. We just divided up. Here's yours, here's mine. Who knows where it went? So then we said, oh, wait a minute. Let's just put the tax refund into our emergency fund. And over many years after that, we were able to get there. Took a long time. That's how we did it. Now, you set a goal. Half the credit card debt, 1 week of emergency fund. You write it down. At the end of the year, you look back, okay, how well did we do? Well, we paid off 40% of our credit card debt, but we didn't save anything for the emergency fund. Okay, fine. What's your goal for 2022? Write it down. People who write down goals, measure how well did we do, let's look back, and then set another goal and move forward. Those are the people who are going to get where they want to go. Without doing this, it's much, much harder. Now, having, listed a bunch of these goals, my intention is not for you to look at this and say, oh man, I'm totally overwhelmed. Tom, I can't do all this stuff. This will take me forever. It's hopeless. I can't do it. This is impossible. That's not the idea here. You want to plug away. You can make a little progress every year. You're not trying to do all this in 1 year or 2 years. No. You don't want to let short-term spending defeat your goals. In other words, let's say you want to buy an outdoor grill that costs $400. Well, can you afford it? Do you have $400 in your checking account? Yeah, oh yeah, I do. Or a savings account? Yeah, we got $400. We got it. Well, by spending that $400, how will that impact, if at all, your long-term priorities of what you said you're going to try to meet in your financial goal for this year? Will it affect it? Well, yeah, it might be harder to pay off all the credit cards. Well, then you can't afford it. You can't afford it. I mean, you got money, but you can't afford it because you're making a higher priority these goals that you just set. Those are important. That's the idea. We got to prioritize things. Most people, regardless of their income, are not meeting financial goals, retirement, because they're just not prioritizing. We're not delayed gratification. Our spending is overwhelms our need to save, and so we don't get where we want to go. Lastly, we're still hopefully at the very end, coming down to the end here of this current pandemic, and the pandemic has caused an incredible financial crisis. But there are other crises, financial crises, stock market crashes, other things can happen in your life that can create a lot of financial stress. So, in addition to these financial goals that you might be setting each year, which I hope you do, I would suggest you also ought to think about the next financial crisis and how you're going to manage that. And so here's some thoughts about that. 3-month emergency fund. I've mentioned that as a potential financial goal for the current year or for the next few years, but this is the most important thing to have for the next financial crisis. So I put a high priority on a 3-month emergency fund. Claim all the business deductions that you're entitled to. Reduce your taxes by claiming these deductions, and then put that tax savings into the 3-month emergency fund. Put your tax refund into an emergency fund. Raise your fees. During this pandemic, were you spending more money on COVID supplies? Are you still spending more money on COVID supplies? If not, I think it's reasonable to pass on these kind of fees to parents as a temporary COVID surcharge fee. Whatever you're spending on COVID stuff in a month, divide it by the number of families in your care and say it's a temporary monthly COVID surcharge fee, that when these expenses go away, the fee goes away. It's probably not going to be much on a monthly basis to a parent. And that can help you save money and put that aside into emergency fund. Reduce your debt. When there's a financial crisis, it's going to be harder to deal with if you got a student loan, if you got a car loan, if you got credit card debt, because you're paying interest on that. And that just makes life harder. So long term, you should reduce and then eliminate student debt, credit card debt, number one, and probably number two, car loan interest. Part-time school-age care. During economic downturns, parents are more likely to look for part-time care. I've seen that in many parts of the country. I don't know if that's true where you live. Contact your resource and referral people and ask them what they're seeing from parent demand. Parents want their kids in smaller group sizes. There may be an increased need for part-time school-age care. And that's something, if you haven't been doing it in the past, is something you may want to think about now or think about in the future. Lastly, is now a time to raise your rates, and then again, put aside that money to pay off debt or put in a 3-month emergency fund. If you haven't raised your rates in several years, certainly it's time to raise your rates. I do a whole class on this, but most providers, I think, undercharge. If you're providing as good a quality care as your local child care center, your rates should be competitive to them. Your rates should reflect the quality of your care. The higher the quality, the higher rates you should charge, in my opinion. Question: if you charge that temporary COVID surcharge fee, is that income to you? Yes. Any money you get from parents, yes, it's still income. All right, so final words. You know, we've just been talking money, 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 all about money. But I don't think that was the primary reason why you started this business. Your priority is caring for kids, and that is what it should be. And the non-financial rewards of caring for kids is significant. And I don't want to downplay that at all. Some providers, they're choosing to care for low-income families. They're not interested in trying to charge more or make a lot of money. And as a result, some providers will never make a whole lot of money. Others will do well financially. But regardless of whether you're not making a lot of money or making a whole lot of money, I think there's room to reduce spending, to increase savings, to prioritize saving for retirement, and helping and planning, setting financial goals, making it more likely you'll meet them. Now, I hope the idea here is to make your money work harder for you by making better decisions about it. In the end, however, it's not just about making money, obviously. Success, happiness, that's not correlated with how much money you're making. So here is my contact information. Again, if you have questions, we got a little more time, you can post them in chat, or now's the time, if you want, unmute your mic and talk to me.
In the meantime, while we're waiting for those questions to come through, I'm going to drop the evaluation survey into the chat box, and that will be our way to make sure that the session met your needs, but also for us to be able to get the certificate out to you. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And if you have any questions, you can either feel free to unmute or go ahead and put those in the chat.
Okay, people are thanking me. It's great. You're welcome. You'll be able to get access to this recording later. And Katie, maybe you can tell people how they can get that.
Yes, if you'd like the recording, you can, you know what, I'll actually send it out to everyone who fills out that survey. I'll have your email address there and I will get the link to the recording out to you that way.
Will they also get a copy of the slides?
Yes, I can send that as well.
Great. Great. Okay, what else here, folks? Everybody's shy.
Hi, my name is Ruth, last name Pina, and I'm very thankful for the information you gave us on the retirement plan, because I had a question.
Sure.
I was like, I had a previous job that I was doing as a full-time before I opened my own daycare.
Yep.
And I do have a retirement through them.
Great.
And I was still doing part-time, but because of the pandemic and everything, I didn't go back to them, but I still have my retirement plan. So I haven't opened a retirement plan with my daycare. So what is your suggestion to do? Should I do the Roth IRS retirement?
So once you worked for somebody else and was able to create a retirement account and contribute money, you got some money set aside in their IRA. You have the option of just leaving it there. And then when you get old enough, you can start taking it out and just leave it where it is. You can do that. Or you can roll it over. You can roll it over to another IRA outside of your employer that you would have more direct control over. And there'd be two reasons why you might want to do that. One is the current IRA, the fees that are charged by that fund might be high. And you could get lower fees by rolling it over into another fund. And that would save you money. That's one good reason to do that. The second reason is you could roll over that current IRA into a Roth IRA and then get the advantage of the benefits of the Roth IRA. Now, if you do a rollover, you'll have to pay tax on the amount of interest that fund has earned so far. And if you can afford to pay that tax out of your pocket and not out of that money that you're rolling over, then I think that's a good idea, because now you got a chunk of money that's now in a Roth IRA. What else? So you cannot contribute any more into that employer fund because you're not working there anymore. So if you've got more money to put aside into an IRA now, yes, I would recommend, I always like putting money into a Roth IRA on your own. And to do that, there are different fund companies. Fidelity, Vanguard are the two largest ones. And if you go to my website and look at that article, where should I invest my money in retirement, I give you much more detail as to what specific fund you should be investing in if you go to Fidelity or Vanguard. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Question. Can you clarify the Roth and the simple and the regular IRA? Currently contributing to a Roth. Can I contribute to one or the other two? Yes, well, you can contribute the full amount to your Roth, $6,000, and the simple, $13,500. But if you cannot contribute more than $6,000 to the Roth or the regular IRA. You could go 3,000, 3,000, 2,000, 4,000, but the total can't be more than 6 for a Roth and a regular IRA. All right. Question: how do you lower your credit cards to increase your credit score. Paying off credit cards will increase your credit score. Paying off debt, paying off car loan interest, paying off student loans, that will increase your credit score. Getting a loan and paying off the loan increases your credit score. I'm not very well versed on that. That's my shortest, best answer I can give you. You know what I would suggest you do, which I do sometimes when I get questions I don't completely understand? Google, how do I increase my credit score? That's what I do. And that'll give you more information than I can tell you. Question, when we reach age 70, we must take the money out. Yeah, when you get to age, well, for Social Security, when you get to be age 70 for Social Security, you must take it out. With IRAs, the rules have changed this last year because of the pandemic. It used to be when you got to be 70 and a half, you were required to take out a certain amount of your IRAs, not counting a Roth. That's another benefit of a Roth. You can leave the Roth money in longer and it continues to earn tax-free money and not have to be required to take some of it out after you turn age 70 and a half. They've extended that for a year now. It's called a required minimum distribution. All right. Anybody else? So my last words then, thank you all for listening. I'm sure you have a lot of other things that you could do besides listening to me. I know family childcare providers work hard. I know you work very, very hard. You work harder than I do. And so I appreciate that. We want you to better understand money, make better financial decisions so you can reach your financial goals, stay working longer if that's what you want to do, or do something else. And I hope what I've had to say is helpful. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Tom.